Hi, Sinful Sumomo here. Today we're going to continue the TwistRose Key. We're on Chapter 2. The grandfather clock struck the half hour, one by one and out of rhythm. The third floor bedroom, one first, the upstairs bathroom, one second, and the hallway, one last as always. After a grudging effort of whispers and clicks, Lynn's hands trembled as she held the parcel under the brown silk lampshade. She had thought the letters would shift in light, that her eyes would adjust and the mistake would be corrected. Yet no matter how hard she stared at the scratched word, it did not change. The parcel felt heavier than it looked. When she shook it, something jaggedly slid from side to side within. She paused to listen. In the kitchen, the violins had resumed their yammering, and from the second floor came the faint din of a TV audience. That meant her father had stopped writing to call out the answers to a quiz show. She ripped the paper and emptied the parcel into her hand. Out tumbled two keys. One was grimy and had an orange plastic tag that said "Cellar." The other was large as her hand, and blackened as if it had grown from ashes and dirt. Its head was fashioned as a petal, and the stem was that of a rose, with three curved sharp thorns. Engraved across the petal, there it was again. TwistRose. In the troll hunt, they always used code names. For years, Nicholas had been Summer Night, and Lynn had been Nettle because of her special nettle bird. But for the Old Town hunt, she had taken a new one, inspired by the rose bush over Rufus's grave. One day she had noticed how it hooked its thorns into the paint of the facade, stretching its branches towards the sky. It reminded her of the junipers that clung to the Trollham mountains with their twisted roots. They never let go, no matter how cruel the wind blew. And that's when she had thought of it, the perfect code name for a troll hunter who was exiled for the moment, but not forever. TwistRose. Lynn had wanted to wait till their next game to share it with Nicholas, so she hadn't said a thing about it. Not to Nicholas, not to anyone. So, Miss Roskowitz, what have you got there? Lynn whipped around, shoving both the paper and the keys in her pockets. How very like her father to know about the squeaky steps. He had his quizzy face on, the lift chin one had worn when his curiosity had set in, and she knew she wouldn't get away with lying. "A parcel," she said, "but it's for me." He tilted his head. "From a friend?" Which was, of course, an excellent question. But the troll hunter signal, whoever had delivered the parcel, had made sure Lynn would be the one to find it, and the name TwistRose could only mean that it was for her, and her alone. But for what purpose? Shrugging as casually as she could, Lynn said, "I don't know yet." The quizzy face softened. "A little mystery, I see. Miss Rosequist, you may carry on." He patted the arm of her still dripping coat before he started back up the stairs. "But if your mystery takes you out into the storm, I know I can trust you to dress for the part." Only when she heard him shout, "What is the Arctic Circle?" from the living room, dared Lynn bring the keys out from hiding. Moving deeper into the hallway, she ignored her coat because she had no intention of going outside the house. She was going under it. The cellar door at the end of the hallway had remained locked since they moved in, despite her father's attempt at wriggling the key out of Miss Ishla. All sorts of trouble could be brewing down there, he had argued. Fires and floods and rodent infestation. Miss Ishtar had claimed that she couldn't find the key and that she needed the storage space for her little hobby, now that she lived in the retirement home. What sort of hobby? Her father had asked, but for once his questions got him nowhere. Lynn smiled. If Harold Rescless knew that his daughter's little mystery involved the cellar key, there would be no stopping him. But he didn't know. She turned the cellar key in the lock and opened the door slowly. Dank air oozed up from below, thick with rot and chemicals. All she could make out was a dented flashlight on the wall, and she tampered steps dissolving into the black. She picked the flashlight off its peg, turned it on, and closed the door behind her, muffling the violins. Below she could hear the river mumbling by, gusting, chilling air up the stairway. The draft was so cold that Lynn's breath made frost clouds. With a shudder, she followed the dust-speckled beam down the stairs. At the landing, the light fell on an animal skull on the banister. It had cracked teeth and large, tilted eye sockets. Lynn hesitated for a moment. What sort of old lady would nail skulls to her banister? But she pressed on, and when she reached the final step and learned the truth about their landlord's little hobby, it all made sense. She was watched by hundreds of eyes. Among the usual clutter of boxes and crates, there were animals everywhere. Cats curled up on barrels, ferrets peeking out between mildewed coats, and falcons strung up under the crossbeams of the ceiling. They were all positioned to glower at Lynn with their glass-bead eyes, and they were all dead. Miss Ishtar was a taxidermist. The old woman's workbench stood right next to the stairs, cluttered with hooks and scoops, and bone cutters and several bottles of clear liquid that might explain the chemical spell. Lynn took a deep, icy breath, annoyed at how hard she was shivering. A troll hunter did not back away at the little creepiness. Taxidermy animals looked grisly, but they couldn't hurt her. Calm down, she whispered to herself, and bring your brain to the party. That's what her father always said if she got impatient with a riddle, and he was right. She could not solve the mystery if she didn't keep her head clear. With both hands on the flashlight, she shook again, more carefully letting the beam roll around the room. There had to be a reason why the two keys had arrived together. One to unlock the cellar door, and the other. The flashlight beam found the back of the cellar. It was overgrown with pale, wet, ghostly roots. They had broken through near the ceiling and crawled down the wall in the tangled mass, crumbling the mortar and splintering the bricks. In the center of the wall, the roots shied away to make an open circle, and in that naked patch, two fissures met and formed an odd-shaped crack. Lynn could swear it resembled a keyhole. She had, of course, expected to find the keyhole in a door, or a cupboard, or a painted chest, but gold didn't always mean gold. At least the strange crack deserved a closer look. She crossed the rough floorboards where the river showed through between the gaps. All the boxes that had been stacked in the back lay toppled on the floor, pushed away by the roots. Lynn shoved them aside so she could see the entire shrub. The roots were not pale and wet after all. They were coated in rime. Lynn frowned at the holes to where the roots had broken through the bricks. If her mapping skills did not deceive her, this wall lay directly beneath the front door, and the rosebush aside. For the first time that evening, it occurred to Lynn to wonder why Miss Ishlar's flower bed was covered with frost. The cold seemed to radiate from the bear's circular patch. Lynn leaned forward to study it. Yes, her first impression had been right. The oddly shaped crack definitely looked like a large, ragged keyhole. 1 point to Miss Rosequist. She lifted the rose key from the measure. The roots stirred. Lynn gave a cry and lurched backwards, stumbling over a crate. Working her fingers on the thorns of the key, a single bead of blood pushed out. She sucked at it, stared hard at the wall. Roots couldn't stir, could they? May have seemed like they had reached for her, but there had to be some other explanation. Maybe the storm? Maybe it had rattled the rose bushes hard enough for the tremors to reach all the way below ground. She got to her feet and raised the key again, waving it back and forth in front of the shrub from a safe distance. Nothing. She cast a look behind her, toward the mounted animals and the banister with its sad skull. If she wanted, she could walk back up the stairs. She could tell her father about the cellar key and Miss Ishlar's hobby, and the curious rose infestation. But then the key would be confiscated, and the mystery, the whole adventure, would be over. A faint snatch of music murmured in her ear. It must have come from the kitchen above, except it wasn't the usual hoarse violins, but a sweet, soft humming that made her think of Almhjell and deep woods and secret maps. Lynn's throat clenched. She did not want the adventure to end. Not yet. Before she had time to reconsider, she pressed her lips together, stepped forward, and thrust the TwistRose key into the wall. It fit perfectly in the crack. As she turned it, there was no click, but she felt something slide into place in there. No, dislocate was a better word. Like something had been pried apart that was never meant to be separated. Freezing air poured against her fingers, along with a flicker of blue shimmering light. Whatever lay on the other side of this wall, it was not the riverbank. Fear came crashing into her body. With painful thumps, she wanted to turn and run, but all of a sudden, the spindling roots shot out and grasped her, winding hard around her arms, wresting the flashlight from her hand. The bricks split apart with a tremendous crack. A torrent of icy air rushed out to meet her. The roots tightened, pulling her towards the opening, but Lynn was too astounded by the sight before the wall to put up much of a fight. There was no cellar and no riverbank either. Instead, she looked out on a desolate frozen mountain valley, where winter twilight painted the snow blue, and stern peaks rose into the sky. A creature crouched in the snow before her, facing away, but so close that she could smell a musky scent. Now it turned toward her. Lynn watched helplessly as elongated face came into view. 2 needle-like teeth glinted in its mouth, and a pair of liquid black eyes stared back at her. Then the creature darted forward. With a fast claw grip, it pulled Lynn free of the roots and into its pungent embrace. And that, everyone, is the end of Chapter 2. I will work on Chapter 3 soon enough, and I hope you enjoyed.